Welcome to the Couch Scouts podcast. We provide league-winning analysis, advice, and tools to help you dominate your league and build a dynasty. Scout, draft, win. Here's your host, Matt Cooper.
Welcome to the Couch Scouts podcast. I am your host, Matt Cooper, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Matt Rupert.
How you doing, my man?
I am doing good. Sadly, Jackson will not be able to join us tonight. He is out sick, so wishing and praying for a quick recovery for Mr. Jackson. But the show must go on. Even though I was snowed in to a cabin in Gatlinburg this weekend, but hey, it was a magical experience. Now we're back down here, back at home, ready to podcast. Should be a good time. You ready to get into it?
Oh yeah.
All right. Well, in honor of the Senior Bowl from this past weekend, and really all of last week, I mean, that whole week of practices is huge for the draft process. Lots of scouts are there, especially these smaller school guys. They have a chance to perform on kind of equal footing on a level playing field against guys from big schools, and you can kind of see how they stack up. So it's a big week. It's a big part of the process. Skip and I are going to be recording tomorrow night to be released Friday morning, a full Senior Bowl recap and review, and kind of telling you guys as listeners how you should incorporate that into your process for scouting for your dynasty rookie drafts. But our Inside the Prospect series continues on. If you're new to the show, we go every single week in depth on a prospect. We scout 5+ games most of the time, if that's available, of all 22 film. We watch every snap that they're on the field, and we give a detailed scouting report. We go trait by trait through the whole thing. And so this week we are highlighting Malachi Fields, wide receiver out of Notre Dame. He was, by all accounts, a standout this week at Senior Bowl. Almost every outlet that you look at has him as a riser. In fact, I have seen multiple NFL mock drafts now from reputable sources that have him going in the first round of the NFL draft. So we need to talk about him tonight. Maybe you're listening to this because you saw that he was a standout this week at the Senior Bowl, and so you searched his name and we came up. Welcome to the show. Glad you're here. This is a big-bodied outside receiver standing at 6'4", 220 pounds. He was a 3-star recruit coming out of Monticello High School in Virginia. He started his college career at UVA, where he spent his first 4 years before transferring to Notre Dame for the 2025 season. While in South Bend, the fifth-year senior caught 36 out of his 62 targets for 630 yards and 5 touchdowns. And then this week, like I mentioned, had a great week at Senior Bowl, a lot of good-looking reps in one-on-one drills, and yeah, seems to have seen his draft stock rise. So we will also be looking at some PFF stats as we go along, looking at Fields in comparison to the other 270 FBS wide receivers who have at least 50 or more targets, regular and postseason. So all that being said, let's jump into it. If you're new, we always start the wide receiver position by talking about release and route running. We think the most important job is to get open so that you can earn targets and rack up those PPR fantasy points. So, Rupert, I'll throw it to you, man. What did you notice from Malachi Fields as a route runner?
I'll start with the good. I thought he had a good release package. He's a big guy. He's able to get physical when DBs are trying to press him at the line. So I think he's a guy that, he can deal with press and play on the outside at the NFL level. I thought his hands were better than his feet, but there's definitely some times where he has a good release with his feet, but it was very inconsistent. I thought his best was like an outside release, trying to run deep on a 9 route. But when it comes to route running, I just saw him as below average. I gave him a 5 for his short and intermediate routes and 5 for his deep routes, which, for context, we rate 6 out of 10 as NFL average. So I'm giving him below average here. I didn't see a lot of nuance with his route running. looking at like his deep routes, like at the stem of his routes, I didn't really see like the head fakes, the rocker steps, like things that you'd use to try and get the DB to flip his hips the wrong way. And then on the short and intermediate routes, look, he's a big guy. Like he's not going to be a guy that's going to be super sharp in and out of his cuts. I just didn't see him sinking his hips very well and making sharp cuts, creating separation. Most of the time, like when scouting, it was like, oh, he's not open. And when he does get open, typically the DB can kind of close the ground pretty quick and get back in his hip pocket. Is a note that I had multiple times watching him. So I think he's going to be a guy that's going to struggle to get open in the NFL level.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I had a note on here about his release versus press coverage that it was respectable. It wasn't amazing, but it was solid. He could get off against press coverage, and really some of his best reps were when he won right off the line against press, got his guy off balance, and then blew past him. I thought, we'll talk about athleticism in more detail later, but I thought he's pretty fast for a 6'4" wide receiver in a straight line. When he could build up to speed, there were times I saw him create separation just by running in a straight line, and that's impressive to see at 6'4". But like you said, not very quick, doesn't sink his hips well. This is not a twitchy guy. Not a lot of suddenness to his movement, and yeah, I mean, this is. When you look at the PFF numbers, so overall he had a 76.2 receiving grade, which is decent, top 25% in all of FBS, 2.2 yards per route run, also decent, top 30% in the FBS. Here's the negative. So he had a 75.2 versus zone, which is a good grade, 66.7 receiving grade versus man coverage. That was bottom half of all of the FBS. And, we're going to talk about contested catch in a minute. And he had 23 contested targets. That's out of, what did I say, 62 total targets. 23 of them were contested. That's 37% of his targets. That's
insane.
That's an alarming number. I am just going to guess that if you go look up NFL draft prospects who had a 37% contested catch, 37% of their targets were contested, and say, did any of those guys go round 1 and 2? Let's just filter that. So these guys were thought of highly, went high draft capital, should have had opportunity, and just that sample that also 37% of their college targets were contested. I would bet it's a whole laundry list of busts. I feel fairly confident. I mean, I haven't verified that. Maybe some of our more analytical listeners can bring the data on that. I would be really interested to see it. But yeah, he just doesn't separate versus man coverage. In the short to intermediate, there were a few okay like curl routes, but even those, like, he didn't sink his hips and stop on a dime very well. It mostly, if he got open on a curl route, is because the DB was playing off coverage to begin with. I think I saw maybe one good slant route on his tape. Not much. And even that was against press coverage. So he's, press, he did well. But if the DB's given him space, backs off a little bit and he tries to run the slant, they're probably going to undercut it because, again, he's slow making the cuts. His routes are a little bit predictable and sluggish, and it's easy for a DB to try to jump that route. So, yeah, overall, I had him at a 7 for release versus press coverage, which is a respectable grade, but I have him at a 4 for short to intermediate routes and a 5 for deep routes. Even though he won on some goes and posts, again, that was more of just like run fast in a straight line. Maybe you won off the release, but like you said, not a lot of like head nods or subtle nuance that's going to get a DB to flip his hips and open things up. So, yeah, route running, if you've been around, if you've listened to this podcast for a while, that's a big deal to us. It's a really important part of playing the wide receiver position. Typically, if you're not a good route runner and you're not creating separation, this is not a guy that we're going to be overly interested in. And so this is not a great start to the film review here for Malachi Fields. He's getting a lot of hype this week. Like I said, I saw at least two prominent outlets that mocked him going in the first round after his big Senior Bowl. So, let's continue on, because we do have some positive things to say about Malachi Fields. But he's not a separator. This is a not open very often kind of guy. So, continuing on, let's get into the ball skills, okay? Hands, contested catch radius, ball tracking down the field, body control, the ability to contort, maybe toe tap on the sidelines or reach back for a ball thrown behind you. There's a lot that goes into these different attributes, and we've got 5 or 6 of them that we're going to talk about. I'll throw it to you first, Rupert. What did you notice here from ball skills for Malachi Fields?
This is absolutely his best trait and where he really shined. I thought he showed good technique with hands catching away from his body, not trying to body catch or underhand it. I gave him an 8 for his hands, 8.5 for contested catch, 8.5 for his catch radius. Not only being tall, I thought he had long arms, could weep well and time his jump well. And his body control was great too. I gave him an 8 there as well. His ball tracking, I thought was phenomenal down the field. I gave him an 8 as well. So I think his ball skills here is where he really shines, and is pretty much the only reason he was able to put up some numbers in college with all those contested catch opportunities. They're just like multiple times on film. I think particularly against Pitt this year, he had 2 really nice.
That was his best game by far. I mean, he got the most separation in that game too. Like, if there was any good route running tape at all in his film, it was in the Pitt game.
Yeah,
he was a monster there. That was definitely him at his best. But yeah, I'm seeing it the same way. I mean, I think most people would. He's got elite ball skills. Every highlight that you look up, it's going to be a crazy contested catch. He had, for me in my grades, again, 6 is NFL average, 7 is good for an NFL player, 8 is like great even by NFL standards. So when I'm scouting a prospect and I give 8 or more, like that's a compliment. And he got 8 or more in almost every ball skill category. 7.5 for hands, 8.5 for contested catch, 8.5 for catch radius, 8.5 for body control. I gave him a 9 for ball tracking. I thought his ability to track the ball downfield was really exceptional. He even put that on display in the Senior Bowl. So before I want to make a quick note now that I'm talking about the Senior Bowl. A lot of the hype that's being generated from Malachi Fields came from these one-on-one reps that they'll do during practice throughout the week. And this is where I would caution people with how not to use the Senior Bowl in your process. I think if you've done extensive tape scouting and you have a good feel for who a player is, you can look at Senior Bowl to confirm those things, to see them translating to a field with other top-level prospects. I think it's not that there's no value in it, but you can't take something that a guy didn't do at all on his whole college tape and you see him doing it like with no pads against somebody with no pass rush and there's no safety help, and he can take these long developing routes and the quarterback's got all day to just sit there and wait for him to get open. The DB is almost always going to look bad in that scenario. And like there were some good routes for Malachi Fields, particularly one where he kind of shucked with his hands and got open on a slant route, short to intermediate. That was something he didn't do a lot at college. Looked really good. But again, that's one rep, right? So you have to be careful overvaluing these practice reps. There's not no value in them. And I think especially for like a smaller school guy that maybe you haven't seen him against top level competition, there can be a lot of value in that. But a perfect example a couple years ago was Roman Wilson was like the clear. Everybody said, "Oh, he's the biggest winner. He's dominating. Nobody can guard Roman Wilson at Senior Bowl." And then we watched the tape, and it was like, this dude is never open. And we had a really low recliner rating on Roman Wilson, and he's done nothing in the NFL. So you can't always believe the Senior Bowl hype. All that being said, in the 7-on-7s, which is, I would say, more valuable than the 1-on-1 reps, there was a play where Malachi Fields won on a deep route, and the quarterback, Taylon Green out of Arkansas, threw him a ball, and Taylon Green, not a very good quarterback. It was wildly to his right. I mean, he's wide open. He's got multiple steps, and you could just see this is the ball tracking. Like, you could see Malachi Fields looking up, like neck almost horizontal to the ground, and veering like wide to the right to get underneath that pass. And it was just like, this is, if you look up ball tracking in the dictionary, this is textbook. Like, you could, this is teach tape ball tracking. And I think that was on his live tape in college too. So, anyway, all of that to say, Malachi Fields, he tracks the ball really well down the field. He just phenomenal, like one-handed grabs, high pointing, using that 6'4" frame, contorting his body. The contested catch rate versus PFF from PFF is 47.8%. So right around 50-50, but again, 23 contested targets. That's a lot, and there's going to be a varying degree of quality to those targets, shall we say, right? Like, some of those 23 that went down as contested targets might have been borderline uncatchable. So anyway, I think he's a great contested catch wide receiver. I think in our thumbnail we're going to put contested catch merchant ? And my answer to that would be yes. He doesn't get open, but he's great at contested catches. So I think that's the very definition of a contested catch merchant. Worth noting, 2.7% drop rate, which is very good. Very reliable hands. Did not drop a lot of passes at all. So a lot to like from Malachi Fields with the ball skills. So let's move on. And before we do, let's take a quick break to shout out CouchScouts.com. So if you're listening to this, you're enjoying the analysis, you're like, where can I get more of this? Where can I maybe get this in written form where I could pull it up during my rookie draft? And maybe could I have that for like every prospect that I could possibly be thinking about drafting? We got you covered. CouchScouts.com. We have a rookie guide. It's the ultimate cheat sheet for dominating your rookie draft. Whether you just want to get on there and use our rankings, and hey, we did hundreds of hours of research so that you don't have to, and just draft off of our rankings, we stand behind them. Or if you want to go in there and read all of these detailed scouting reports and make your own informed decisions based off of them, or look at the all-22 film that we have on our website so you can watch the film for yourself. Whether you want to look at our recliner rating system, all of it is in there. And so highly recommend checking it out. We also do a bonus podcast every single week just for our members, Scout Potato Podcast, where we're going to hit on some more under the radar guys. We're going to be talking about Mike Washington Jr. tonight, another big Senior Bowl standout. So don't miss out on the value at CouchScouts.com. For $60, you can get a whole year, which is $5 a month, but I'm going to save you even more. Use promo code GUIDE for 30% off, because we just released the first edition of our rookie guide. We got about 20 prospect profiles live in there already. We'll have 60 or 70 by the time all is said and done. So get in there, check it out, CouchScouts.com. Use promo code GUIDE for 30% off your first year. And let's get into the rest of the show here. So, couple of attributes, traits that we haven't talked about yet: yards after the catch ability, physicality, and speed, burst, and quickness. So we'll start with physicality, because I think that plays into route running and the ball skills, two things we've already talked about. But how did you see his physicality show up on tape, Rupert?
I liked his physicality. I also gave him an 8 in this area. I did like he does a good job with the contested catch, but I thought he was really physical once he had the ball in his hands. Um, I gave him slightly above average 6.5 for Yak. They threw a lot of screens to him, surprisingly. Always I felt like for a guy that you don't kind of profile as being a Yak guy. Uh, but there's like multiple times on tape, like where he puts his shoulder into a guy and this runs him over. One of his best slant routes, he ended up like carrying a defender on his back for like 15 yards. So he's a physical like specimen, tough to bring down. Almost seems like a tight end. Once he has the ball in his hands, like he's not going to juke you, make you miss, explode around the corner, but he can be physical and get some yards after catch, and uh, that's like where I think he profiles more as like a possession, work against zone, kind of like wide receiver 3, 4, that can like help keep the chains moving. So I thought he was physical, especially with his yards after catch.
Yeah, interesting note. You mentioned it felt like to you a lot of screens were thrown his way. That's also 37% of his targets, and 50% of his receptions were within 0 to 9 yards of the line of scrimmage. So that's not all screens, but a lot of it is, because we mentioned he's not catching. I mean, he caught some curls, not a lot of slants. A lot of that was screens and kind of gadgety stuff. So, 37% of his targets were 20 plus yards down the field. 37% of his targets were 0 to 9 yards of the line of scrimmage. That leaves almost nothing in the intermediate area of the field. And then again, a lot of those were contested. So really interesting like usage profile there, and none of it screams positive to me. Like all of that screams I don't separate very well. I mean, when you only catch 32 passes or 36 passes, that's not a lot. That's not showing me a guy that's going to be like a high target earner in the NFL, go-to guy, PPR, rack it up. And then like when even out of those 36, over half of them were 0 to 9 yards of the line of scrimmage. It's like he's catching screens and deep shots, and that's it. And that profile scares me a lot. And I think, but to your point, I do think his physicality was good. That's where we were going with that. His physicality, I think you said you were an 8. I think I gave him a 7. I don't think he was quite as much of a bully as some of the other big guys we've scouted. So like Chris Bell, Denzel Boston, better physicality than him for sure. Surratt, I liked Surratt's physicality better. So as the bigger body guy, like it's fine. He's not playing soft out there, but I didn't think it was overly amazing. And
He definitely wasn't as physical with his route running and creating separation with being physical. I 100% agree. I actually made that
yeah,
now. Like I feel like he should be more like Denzel Boston, but just wasn't.
yeah, like if you're not creating separation with like great footwork and quick twitch and all that, like a lot of these big bodied guys create separation by doing a little bit of like a swat the hands, get off me, last second create separation right as the target's coming in. He didn't do as much of that. So, um, yeah, yards after catch for me, he averaged 5.3 yards after catch per attempt, which is middle of the road. It's a respectable number for a big guy. I didn't think that this was a standout trait. Not very shifty or elusive with the ball in his hands. Sometimes he would power through somebody. I gave him a 6. So NFL average there. He forced 6 missed tackles in 2025. Relatively low number there. But again, like 36 catches. So it's not like he's getting tons of opportunities to force missed tackles either. And he's 6'4". Like how many 6'4", 220 plus pound guys are like juking guys out of their shoes and forcing missed tackles? He's just not. He doesn't have that kind of special movement skill to him. So With that being said, let's get into the athleticism, speed, burst, and quickness. What did you notice there, Rupert?
He definitely has good build-up speed, I thought, but everything else I thought was pretty subpar. I gave him a 6.5 for his game speed. Like if a DB was playing off coverage and he was just able to run straight, I feel like, after 15, 20 yards, he has a good head of steam on him. But as far as bursts, I gave him a 6. I think for being a big guy is okay. It's past like average for NFL for that size, but his quickness was just subpar. I ended up giving him a 5 in that area.
Yeah, we saw it similarly. I was a little bit higher than you. I had him at a 7.5 for game speed because I do think that build up speed, like you said, if he can run in a straight line and kind of eat up that cushion, all of a sudden he's even with the defensive back. And then it's that phrase, if he's even, he's leaving. I saw that a few times where he ended up creating multiple yards of separation just by outrunning a guy. So I thought, especially at 6'4", like that's very respectable. So I gave him a 7.5 for the game speed. I was at a 6.5 for burst. Again, had to build up to it, like you said. It um, wasn't a lot of acceleration or like 0 to 60 in the blink of an eye. If you watched him and Chris Bell back to back, they're both fast, but Chris Bell's acceleration is like night and day different. And then I was also at a 5 for quickness. I just think, yeah, he doesn't sink his hips well. He's slow in and out of breaks. He's not sudden. We've said that, not a twitchy guy. So, yeah, a little bit limited as an athlete, very limited as a route runner. Great ball skills. This is a profile that if you've been following the Couch Scouts for a while, we just don't usually buy into it. The Keon Colemans, the Xavier Legettes of the world. It's a really risky profile. And I think with all of this buzz, like if he does go first round of the NFL draft, he's going to go way too high in rookie drafts. I think of Legette when the Panthers traded up and took him in the first round, and he's going like early to mid second of rookie drafts. And that was just a hard fade for me at that price. And I believe I would treat Malachi Fields the same way. I've got him at a 67.33 overall recliner rating, which, if you look at our grading scale, if you're familiar with it or if you're not, from 65 to 69.9 is backup with starter upside. And that's how I have him graded, is a backup with starter upside. I think if he is a starter, if he goes in the first round, an NFL team is going to throw him out as a starter. Obviously, like Legette, I probably had graded as a backup, but he still is starting because he got that draft capital. But has he been somebody that you wanted in your fantasy lineups? No, not very often. And even the spike weeks, you probably had him on your bench because you couldn't trust him enough to start him. So you missed out even when he did do something decent. So I think Malachi Fields is kind of your classic sacrificial X receiver. If he plays for an NFL team, he's going to be out there like running wind sprints and trying to stretch out the defense for the rest of the offense. And it's very, very, very hard for me to picture him being a high target earner at the NFL, given his college production profile and what we saw on tape. It would be shocking to me if he went out there and was like earning a bunch of targets. I just don't see that at all in the range of outcomes.
I 100% agree. Like I feel very firmly that it's just not going to happen. Like 5th-year senior hasn't put up more than like little over 800 yards. It's not like he's coming out as a junior with this kind of profile where you're like, oh, maybe there's a lot to develop, or he has the physical tools to really be quick in and out of his breaks and create separation there. But I just don't see it, and I feel very comfortable saying that I'm going to come away with 0 shares.
Yeah, and if you're new to this show, you should know most of the time we're doing these main shows with the big names that people are searching that are kind of, like go back and look at our past episodes this year. We've done all first-round rookie picks, basically. We've done Jeremiah Love and Carnell Tate and Jordan Tyson and Mekhi Lemon, and we had very positive things to say about all the big-name guys so far. And historically, if we get to a guy on the main show who's getting all this hype, who's being talked about as a first-round pick, and we come out and like dump on the guy like this, that hit rate, I mean, not to take a little victory lap or like, but just to show you some credibility. Like when we come out and say, "Hey, this is a hard fade for us," I haven't had a guy yet that backfired on me. I'll say that. Like Quentin Johnston is the closest thing maybe that's come to that backfiring because he kind of did something at the beginning of this year. But if you spent a first round rookie pick on Quentin Johnston, I think you've been disappointed. Last year, our big fade was Caleb Johnson. A few years ago, we were like hardcore fading Braylon Allen. So I mean, for what it's worth, when we come out here, it's pretty rare that we come out here and just have almost all negative things to say about a guy and say fade him at all costs. And when we have done that, that's been a pretty low hit rate for that player. So take it for what it's worth. We don't know everything. We're not always right, but I feel pretty confident in this fade here. And I think he's going to go at least mid-second, if not higher, probably in rookie drafts would be my guess. And I don't think you'll regret fading him at that cost. So nothing personal against Malachi Fields. It's the Dynasty Fantasy Football game that we play, and it's our job to tell people who we think they should draft and who we think they shouldn't. So wish him all the best. Hope he has a successful NFL career. Don't think he's going to score a lot of fantasy points, but there have been plenty of guys who've been out there and played for NFL teams and made big money and just weren't big fantasy producers. So would love that for him. All that being said, we're going to sign off here in a second, go record our bonus show on Mike Washington Jr. That is a Senior Bowl standout that we will have a lot more positive things to say about. So check out that one on the Scout Potato podcast. If you haven't already, join our free community Discord. We'll have a link in the show notes. It is hopping, almost 300 guys in there talking Dynasty all the time. It's a really, really fun community and totally free, no strings attached. We just want to get to know the people that listen to our show. So join the Discord, leave us a rating and review on whatever podcast app you're listening on, and hope you have a blessed week. We'll see you guys next week.